Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic Library. One book at a time, one author at a time, and one period at a time, at least for now. The period that we're in now is the ancient world. There came a time a few years ago where I was hunting around for things and realizing I was spending a little too much time hunting around for things, so I at least grouped all the ancient stuff together. And the author that we're going to deal with today isn't well represented in my Penguin Classic collection. I don't claim to have every Penguin Classic ever made, and I don't claim actually to want every one. Some of you have already pointed out, even now, even after only a month and a half, that there are blind spots. There are things that aren't there. This is true. I don't have all the philosophical works, all the Penguin volumes of Plato. I don't have all the Penguin volumes of Aristotle. I don't have all the philosophical works of Cicero, for instance. And this is another one. This is another one that we should have got at. We should have got to this author a long time ago. This author is Euripides, the Greek tragedian Euripides. We've done Aeschylus and we've done Sophocles. And I confess, Penguin Classic has done a number of volumes, I think 3 or 4 volumes of Euripides, and I confess the reason why we haven't got to him is because I don't have much. And the reason for that is because I don't particularly like Euripides. I don't particularly enjoy his work for a number of different reasons. The one Penguin Classic that I have is this one, the Bacchae and Other Plays, which also has Helen and Ion and the Women of Troy. And it's one of a number of Penguin Classic volumes, 3 or 4 that they do. These are all translated by Philip Vallacott. I'm pretty sure that in these older Penguin Classics, he translates everything. I'm pretty sure that unlike some other ancient authors, they don't bounce around from translator to translator. I think it's all Philip Vallacott. And this is no slight against him. He does a fairly good job. These translations, I think, are a little old now, but I don't know what you would do to really make them all that much better. I know that the Lattimore and Green translations for the University of Chicago tend to be the ones that people encounter in schools for all the Greek tragedians, especially Euripides. And I have tried with this author. I read him periodically. I reread The Women of Troy for this Daily Penguin. And I have also taught him and tried my best to listen to my students. One of the most invaluable things about teaching a room full of students, especially when encountering canonical works for the first time, is to listen to them and see what they can teach you. They're not teaching you in a didactic way, but you can still learn an enormous amount from any good student. Any good teacher will learn an enormous amount from their students on a regular basis. And I never really got it. I never really got the great magic skeleton key that I was hoping for. That's happened with a few other authors, but not with this one. We are once again dealing with the pitiless ratio. Euripides lived at the height of 5th century Athens, and yet he wrote for his whole life. He was from a well-to-do family, so he didn't need to work. He didn't need to be concerned with managing farms or estates or anything like that. So he wrote for his whole life and probably produced well over 90 plays. And we have 18 of those plays. So that you'll notice right away, that is slightly better than the other 2 Greek tragedians for whom we have anything like a representative number of complete plays. It's many times as many. it's Euripides. You need multiple volumes or a big fat volume in order to get his complete plays. It would be nice, again, when we fantasize about ideal Penguin Classics, it would be nice if Penguin Classics did a complete plays of Euripides in a big deluxe edition with the French flaps and the deckled edges, maybe a new translation or a number of new translators going at all these things again. That would be nice. That would be very nice, but and maybe that would be the magic skeleton key. But one way or another, we have fairly good texts, and Vallacott does a fairly good job here. And these plays have been studied enormously, not only for their own intrinsic interest, but also for the fact that we can. What we wouldn't give to have 18 plays by Aeschylus, what we wouldn't give for that. But so even though it's a fraction of what he wrote, a tenth of what he wrote, it's still more than the others. But I see myself, and always have, fundamental differences between these plays and the plays of Aeschylus and Sophocles, which on one level anyway, before we talk about world literature, on one level, those are the only things I can think of that are fair to compare these things to. And if I would ordinarily say it's not very fair because we don't have any idea what the greatest things were that these people wrote. We have a tiny fraction of what they wrote. it's a little fairer to play that game with Euripides because even though we don't know the greatness or lack thereof of everything else that he wrote, we have twice as much as we do for the others. So I think I've always considered it a little bit fair to compare him to Sophocles and Euripides, and I think he suffers enormously if you do that. It's in this particular case, unlike with a great many of the works that we're looking at from the ancient world in your Daily Penguin, I think the reason why I don't like these plays is because they aren't good. And because Euripides, by extension, was not good. And that feels heretical, of course, to say, because he's absolutely canonical. Western literature, it starts with him. Many people would say that it actually starts with him because he subverts the conventions of classical Greek drama more than Sophocles and Aeschylus put together, with the things that he does and the innovations that he does on stage, some of which would have been very apparent to a professional actor or a professional theater goer back in his day. But even so, if you read straight through, if you start with Aeschylus, you read straight through Aeschylus, and then, which is I might remind you the work of one afternoon, and then you go to Sophocles and you read straight through Sophocles, which is again the work of another afternoon, and then you go on and read Euripides, which is still basically the work of a long afternoon. I think that whether you know Greek or not, whether you know history or not, whether you know Greek drama or not, you would immediately see the differences. They're fundamental. And although those fundamental differences often involve taking risks and innovations with the nature of the drama, the nature of how many characters are on stage, the nature of who talks, and especially the nature of what we would call psychology or interiority, I think that those innovations come at a great cost. That I think the plays aren't good. I have never read a Euripides play. I've never read, like there are many that I haven't read. I've read them all many times, and I have never been dramatically moved. Nothing has ever moved me in a Euripides play, because the stuff that's dramatically moving comes at too high a cost to all the rest of it. Characters make no sense. Characters change their nature from scene to scene in the same play. Major characters show up out of nowhere for no reason, disappear into the ether for no reason. The basic background logic of the plot machinery for most of these plays is just moth-eaten. I know again that it's heresy, but I always get the impression that when I'm reading things like that in Women of Troy, it's really, really pronounced. But I think even in the Bacchae, which is considered his masterpiece, I think even there, I read these plays, and again, the most heretical thoughts just come to my mind, which is that there is no higher. Critics have gone on for the inconsistencies that I'm talking about. Critics have talked about them endlessly, and come up with all sorts of highfalutin dramatic excuses for what those inconsistencies and infelicities are doing in the play, the work that they're serving, the tremendous work that they're serving. But then when I read them, including the reread I did for today, the only thought I have is this is incompetence. This is just incompetence. This is a playwright who would rather yell at his audience than construct a drama that will move them to think on their own. I'm probably wrong about that, but this is not a case of Donna Tartt or something like that, where I am relatively new to the work and need lots of time to think it through. I know Euripides backwards and forwards, and it still never occurred to me. That key has never happened. So I'm not sure that it will, and as a result, of course, the aspect of your Daily Penguin, whether or not I recommend the volume, is going to be a little muted. I do. Philip Vallacott is a fine translator, a workhorse. And I like, in a way, the way that Penguin does this. If you think about it, and Vallacott's, if I remember correctly, his editorial stuff in here will help you to see that the four plays in here are connected. Euripides wrote a lot of plays drawing on the matter of Troy, on the Trojan War, and there's a way that you can see that in all of the Penguin groupings. I guess. I guess that you could see that. I don't like it. I think that we should be looking at Euripides together, one volume, one big volume. Well, I know that Penguin can make them, and I know that a big collected Euripides would do well in schools, which is the other motivation for breaking these things up into little volumes. One way or another, I can recommend these Penguin volumes and this Penguin translator. I can't wholeheartedly recommend this author, which feels really It feels really strange when we're talking about Euripides. Nevertheless, I call them like I see them. This is, after all, your Daily Penguin is not a literature survey. It's my literature survey. It's a survey of my Penguin Classic wall and my reactions to them. I guess I need to stress that more than ever today. But we're going to wrap this Penguin Classic up with, this is Euripides. This is the only volume of Euripides I have, so I don't need to hold up many volumes, and we won't be encountering him again. And we're going to move on. We're going to move on next time. So we did Euripides today. I'm thinking maybe tomorrow, in order to get our mojo back, we should do an author I really love. Seems fair, right? So I will hunt around in the ancient section, and we will do an author I love tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.